You got it?
Good.
Oh, okay.
Little technical problem, but thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Baker. I'm with Firestorm, and we're pleased to have you joining us for this Crisis Coach webinars. This is presented by the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce and the Eastern Great Lakes Association of Contingency Planner, Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the Association of Contingency Planner. Excuse me. Today we're discussing the containment myth, misinformation magnets. This is part of the Crisis Coach webinar series. It's number 4 in the 2016 series. You can go to firestorm.com and watch previous webinars in this series and even previous years, and you can register for future webinars as well. We also like to have you like us on Facebook, Firestorm Solutions. Follow us on Twitter, Firestorm Soul. And there is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. We would like to remind you the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and this work product should be discussed in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, do not interpret these comments or information as legal advice or legal opinion. This webinar series is underwritten by the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce and the Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the Association of Contingency Planners. Our presenter today is going to be Blair Neville, and he'll be joining us shortly. And in the meantime, we have Dr. Michael Redmond with us from the Association of Contingency Planners. Dr. Redmond, over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Bill. I appreciate it, as always, being on these calls. And I encourage people to go to look at our past webinars also. But a little bit about Association of Contingency Planners. For those people in Rochester or Syracuse, we highly invite you to come to one of our meetings as a guest for free. And then our first meetings are always free. And we have topics on cybersecurity, business continuity, disaster recovery, emergency management, the new ISO trainings that are coming out, different areas. And we encourage people to come as a guest. And if you are not in those areas, would like to still be part of the group, you can always go to our website, join us, and you can conference call in every month to live meetings and ask questions. And we encourage you to do that. And Bill, thanks so very much for having me on today.
Thank you, Dr. Redmond. As I mentioned, our presenter today is Blair Neville. Blair is our principal in New Jersey. And over to you, Blair.
Great, Bill. Thank you. I do appreciate it, and I want to thank our partners for supporting this. We really appreciate their support and help in putting together these webinars and for their constituents. We have an interesting topic this morning. I want to start out by kind of relating a little story. As I was putting together the presentation, kind of thought of a commercial that I had seen many times, and it reminded me of just the kind of topic we're going to talk to today and address. And I'm sure as I walk through it, most of the people on the call will kind of remember it. And if you kind of picture yourself, there's two young people talking on a street corner, and one of them says, "Where did you hear that?" And the response is very quick, like, "On the internet." And the gentleman says to the young lady, "And so you believed it?" And she responds with, "Yes. You can't put anything on the internet that's not true." So the next response is, "Where'd you hear that?" And then again, "On the internet." And that's when the French model shows up, who looks a little bit less than modelist, like a model, and with a comment of bonjour. So we're not going to do the presentation in French, but I think it's a good starting point to say we need to be really careful when we look at the information that we collect on social media and some of the potential problems that come along with it. So as we move through the presentation today, we'll talk a little bit about some of that misinformation, how it affects companies, how it can affect you, both as a business and in some cases personally, and maybe build some guidelines as how we can manage it and help you kind of see it before it happens and protect yourself with it. First of all, when you think of the word misinformation, really as we go through this process, think of it more as the picture describes as a magnet, because what it does as we start to see half-truths, details that may or may not be true, unsubstantiated, they draw attention, and that attention creates impacts to you. And really, your opportunity in managing this is twofold. One is, can you get in front of it, stop it before it happens, and or if it happens, how do you deal with it? Because in some cases, especially in the case of a crisis, if something does happen to your business or there's an event, there will be misinformation. There will be issues you have to deal with, and containing them quickly and containing them up front creates an environment where you can avoid additional issues and consequences that are a result of it. And the key piece is, how do you stay in control? That's the question that has to be answered when you look at this. How can you step back as a owner of a business or someone who's running a division of a company or a sales manager, for example, for a company? How do you stay in control and avoid some of the complexity and confusion that can come from this type of information? And I like to use the word sticky. It can get very sticky, and it's hard to correct it. I grabbed 3 examples here, and the larger one is is apropos because of the election going on today. And you see these things, and you realize that there are still a number of people who, for whatever reason, maybe biased, maybe just that they haven't thought through the issues, still believe things that they read, and still can point to what they think is evidence, even though there's clear evidence that they're not true. Jade Helm, if you're not aware of it, was a military exercise. But if you Google it, you'll see that the discussions are all about martial law in the U.S. It's all about invasion of our borders. It's about preparing for taking over certain states. Just some crazy things that people talked about, and information was flying around the internet that was amazing that people would even spend the time to write some of it. The 1% tip, I'm not sure if you've heard about that, but it's essentially an internet discussion with regards to someone who, in a restaurant left 1% on a bill, and of course it hit the news, and totally unsubstantiated, wrong, but a lot of noise, a lot of drama, and you can see just simply how something so simple and small just takes over. And you start to think about, if this is your company, or there's an information about your business or some of your employees, maybe about a product set or a service you're providing, it can be difficult to manage. And it's a growing trend, because generally we all know everyone has a phone in their hands, everyone has a camera, they're all microphones, we're all budding journalists, we all have access to web pages and blogs that we can put information on, and all of a sudden we're all reporters, and it's disturbing that you can see how quickly that people can take a phone out and film a crisis or a disaster, and it hits the web before anyone really knows what's going on, and it's hard to contain that information. The damage to it is, this is where the problem starts, is that when you look at that details and you look at that information that's out there, it's your brand, and that's really the damage that can happen, is to the trust around that brand. And we all talk about our companies, we all speak about them, and when we're talking to customers and clients, it's honesty, integrity, ability to meet your customers' needs. Those are the cornerstones of what makes you as a business successful. But you have to battle that emotion of trust, and it is an emotion. It's not something that's tangible. You can't. It's hard to measure except from an emotional point of view, and that is easily eroded. And that's the danger around all this information. And unfortunately, sometimes in many cases, you don't even know it's happening. That's the tough part, is if you're not aware of what's happening in the industry, if you're not aware of what's happening on the web, it can take over very quickly, and that trust can be broken. I started my career in sales many, many years ago, and there was an old saying that I was taught early on, is that people will buy from people that they like. And if they don't like you, they're not going to buy from you. But the reality is, over the years, it's sort of, I realize it's more people buy from people they trust. If they don't like you, they won't buy from you. But definitely, even if they like you, they don't trust you, they're not going to buy. And once that trust is eroded, it's very hard to bring back. And the tough thing is that trust is actually an attribute. It's an added value to your business. And unfortunately, I'm sorry about that. Unfortunately, as you allow it to erode, if you do not keep control of it, it can cause a lot of damage to your business. And there's been a number of studies. One study I looked at as I was putting together the presentation, it had to do with the denial of service study and what were the effects on the clients from the customers that had these issues. And the reality was quite interesting in that the report said more than 50% of the people surveyed said that losing the trust was more of the larger damage, followed by loss of revenue, about 34%. So that trust figure was actually more of the problem that occurred. And you look at that and realize that trust is a significant part of your business, and it's a significant part of your added value. And protecting it is really the key. So as we move through our process today, I want to show you some techniques of how you control it, how you manage it, how you stay on top of it, and more importantly, how do you protect it? And you want to keep it protected. And that protection is critical, because given the strength in your trust, it allows you to attract customers, it allows you to keep talent, it allows you to keep premium suppliers, and it's also competitive. As that trust grows and a reputation grows, it builds a competitive barrier. So it's not only losing it is a negative, that's clear, but growing that and growing that brand trust is a positive, and we know how important our brands are. And they can be damaged quickly. The thing is, you, as an owner and a protector of that brand, you don't want to be the last to know about things. That's really the key, is having the ability to contain, obtain that information, and more importantly, turn it into intelligence. And what I really mean by that is that data is great. You have to have information, but many times without it, and without insight into it, without experience, without expertise, without understanding the context of it, it's hard to turn it into intelligence, and intelligence is what you really make your decisions on. And unfortunately, there's a lot of barriers to that. Is everyone comfortable that they know what the media is saying about their company, or social media is saying about their company? Everyone feel really comfortable that they have a good handle on what their employees are saying about your company or your business, or your competitors are saying about your company or your business. And those are the things that start to permeate through. In the event of a crisis, then what kind of information is, again, flowing back out about your response, how you're dealing with it, about your ability to stay in business. All of those things are important and need to be addressed, but if there's barriers to that information for you, you don't have the ability to see it, you don't have the ability to collect it, you're not going to be able to be vigilant in protecting that brand. And the key really comes back to understanding the fact that the data is there, it's out there, it is collectible, at the same time, how do you build some type of insight around it so that you can make decisions and know how to use it within your business, which is the intelligence that one would use. One of the things that we've learned, and a case in point would be in the case of workplace violence, when bad actors go out and do bad things, we've learned over the years that someone knew about it 80% of the time. There was some point along that continuum that somebody knew about 80% of the times that something was going to happen, whether it was through social media, friends, whatever the case may be. And in 67% of the time, 2 or more people knew. So being able to create a network of intelligence, being able to collect that data and translate it into, data of information, and translate it into intelligence. I do apologize for that. I thought I'd turned that off, and I guess I missed it this morning. Being able to translate into intelligence is really the key to our process. Now, all visibility is not bad. We want it. We want it in our business, and you know, we all have marketing groups. We all do advertising. Good visibility is what drives our brand, and we need it. We need to focus on it, and we need to continue to promote it. But that visibility also puts you in an interesting position. It does make you a target, and it does provide opportunities for people to take advantage of it. And you don't want to put yourself in a position where you create high public awareness around a crisis or around an issue in your business that creates and drives negative visibility. And if it happens, you also have to be able to understand what those risks are and the exposures to it if the information starts to leak out into the marketplace. And it's important that there's a balance here of, you know, the good visibility to the bad. How can you put controls and gates around it so A, you take advantage of what's good and what works in your business, but at the same time you reduce that target size to something that is much, much more manageable for your business. Kind of like this. If you've been on our presentations before, some of you might have seen this chart, but really it's a good example of that visibility vulnerability, as we call it here at Firestorm. If you look at it, you say, where's your dot? Who are you? If you look in the center of this, you're under the radar screen, you're fine. Unfortunately, at a time of crisis or an event in your business, your visibility increases. Maybe it's the media, maybe it's social media. Maybe it's just your clients and customers in the industry talking about you as a company. But your visibility increases. All of a sudden, you're easily seen, and you are exposed. You start to border on that negative visibility. At the same time, if you have controls around it, and you can capture that information, you understand what people are saying, you can respond succinctly, cogently to the details that are out there, whether they're misinformation or not, and many times they are, then your visibility decreases. At the same time, if you can't, if you address the concerns too late, visibility increases, and this is not where you want to be. You're very visible in this. That's your company, and people are looking at it, and unfortunately they're seeing the negative sides of the messages because you didn't get control of them quickly enough, you didn't understand their impacts, or you're unable to get your message heard. And one of the key things, and we'll speak about it a little bit later as we go through the process, is the media is not particularly your friend. Don't engage with the media as a way to communicate with your people. It is a vehicle, it's a communications vehicle, and there are times that you need to deal with it, and you have to deal with it. But it's not a communication vehicle for your stakeholders, your customers, your clients, your, if you're a school, your students, your families, your vendors. That's not a vehicle to use to get your message out. because there can be a disproportionate impact because of the way they work. So let's talk a second about information. What do you know? Well, the slide depicts 3 areas. The green is what you know. You understand this, it's your business, you know what's happening in your industry. Also, most companies have a fairly good handle on what they don't know. That's why you hire experts. If you need engineering expertise, you don't know how to do that, you hire it. If you need legal advice, you know you don't know that area, you hire it. So you know those areas where you don't have the skill set, you hire the talent to do it. But the vast majority of the information that's out there is, and for most companies, is what you don't know, you don't know. And that's a large piece of it. You're just not aware of what you don't know, and that's where mistakes happen. So how do you collapse that? How do you take that back and make that orange piece smaller? You have to have a communications program and an intelligent network to monitor what's going on out there so that when things happen, you're able to address them, so that you'll get the red flags indicate that, hey, something is amiss here. Therefore, if I can't handle it, I now know I don't know about it. I'll go get the talent that I need to do it. And the best way to start that process is through what we call predictive intelligence. And it really is a program and an organized way to collect information. So we do it for a number of companies, is that we initially first look at using a large number of tools out there to collect information, using keywords, streams, phrases, just collecting and understanding the information that's out in the marketplace and out on the internet, the blogosphere, whatever term one would use, and collect that information. But more importantly is be able to kind of compress it, slice and dice it, so that you can create a baseline for your company. The tools are out there. You establish a baseline by understanding what some of these, some of the phrases mean, and what's the general flow of information. The key is, once the baseline is established, and if something should happen, if there's an event in your industry, if there's an event at your company, if there's an event around your product set, once that information starts to flow back out, you can measure it against a baseline, and as you see the red flags starting to appear, it gives you the ability to respond. It gives you the ability to respond to that information. Now you have a guideline to say, I'm seeing a change, I'm seeing this information, and I can respond to it quickly. And the example I gave before about the bad actors, that 80% of the time someone knew about it, that is the type of red flags that if you're hearing the pictures on a Facebook page, the commentary on a blog, those things raise red flags that you can respond to. But if you're not looking for them, if there's no knowledge that they might exist, then you can't respond. And that information is typically driven through a crisis management team or a response team that can look at these trends and can look at this information. And once the red flags are raised, that they can respond quickly and cogently to them. In this case, I took off the crisis and put on consequence, because we find that without that knowledge, what ends up happening is decisions are made quickly, and in many cases wrong. Unfortunately, in a time of crisis or an event, the information that you get will be wrong, so your decisions will tend to be wrong. And that doesn't mean you just don't make them. That just means that you have to be able to have a process to try to manage the consequences and reduce the negative consequences that happen. We all know that in a case of a crisis, the data, especially in the first 24 hours, is definitely flawed. But that doesn't mean you can't not make decisions. You have to do it, and that's the tough part about being business owners and managers and supervisors. We're all trained, and we're all trained very well, and we're trained to make decisions. Data comes in, we see it, we understand it, we make a decision. Unfortunately, in a time of crisis or in an event on your business, The data can be wrong. You may not have any data. You're still expected to make decisions. So having a process to manage that helps reduce those consequences, helps you manage that process. And if you see the little chart on the top, it's called an audit chart. And really is a process that was developed actually during the Korean War. And there was a flyer by the name of Colonel Boyd who looked at the success of the American flyers and said, what was it? Why were they so successful? And in the analysis and talking with the pilots, they seemed to go through this OODA loop. And really what it was they understood, they had made an observation that their competitors to flying the MiGs were just not as maneuverable as the American planes. So therefore, they understood that they could make changes quicker. They could make adjustments, and the MiGs could not adjust as fast, which gave them an advantage and created a larger kill ratio and more success. And the process was they observed this, they oriented themselves to that fact, made some decisions, and then they acted quickly. So that loop and that feedback allowed them to be successful. If you extend that, and in our advice to our clients is use that same type of process. Understand what's happening, make a decision based on the data that you have, act on it quickly, monitor it, and monitor it in detail, and then adjust to what you find happening. As the information gets cleaner, as the information gets more correct in the time of a crisis, you will make better decisions. And this will help you avoid that domino effect of making a bad decision and not being able to deal with it, making tough decisions, and without monitoring and adjusting, the consequences can steamroll, and you have a set of dominoes that just keep falling. So this allows you to do it. So that process, very simple, very straightforward, but if you keep it in the forefront, it allows you to manage that process. And in doing that, it allows you to either protect and or regain trust. So if you're in front of it, you're protecting your brand, you're protecting that trust. Or in some cases, if there's information out there, it allows you to regain that trust. And that process allows you to make decisions, allows you to understand how you respond. It allows you to develop a communication process and then what to say during that process. As you can see, the Shelby the dog is masquerading and looks like a lion out there. And that's the kind of thing that just, as you said, that misinformation out there, how do you correct it? And our process is very straightforward. This is, and when we build crisis communication plans and help companies understand it, we try to keep to a very straightforward three-step process. And again, thinking back to that OODA model, who's your audience? What are their concerns? Is the very first question. That's key. If you look at your business, you have clients, you have employees, you have boards of directors, you might have stockholders, you may have banking, financial institutions. All of those groups are different stakeholders in your business, and all of them are different audiences. They all have a little different concerns. They all have to be addressed a little bit differently. The message may all be the same. A fact is a fact. It doesn't change. But those facts may affect those groups a little differently. So who's delivering the message and how the message is delivered is very important. So in part of that Predict.Plan.Perform model is predict who is your audience, what are their needs, and what are their concerns. Second step is planning. Tailor that message to them so that they get the information they need in the timely fashion for that specific stakeholder. Who's going to deliver it? And as you see here, generally, media is not the way to deliver your message. They have to be dealt with, but they're not a communication vehicle for you to deliver messages to your audience. Your audience need to be addressed specifically and very surgically. And generally, in doing it, focus on three messages. Keep it simple, keep it clean. And here's a process that we like to go through to here's a process that we like to go through to help with our clients. Again, predict, plan, and perform is the process we go through, understanding the consequences. So you just saw in the last graph, just understand using those 3 steps to collect information. Once you have that information, you note it. Make sure that it's, are these facts, are these suggestions, are these just comments? They're all good to have, but make sure that you know which is which. Timestamp them, make sure they're documented, make sure that the sources are verified, and then set your actions and your priorities. Who's going to deal with it? Who's going to deliver the message? How's it going to be delivered? When is it going to be delivered? And then make sure it's followed up. What did you hear? What were the commentary once those messages were delivered? So in that time of crisis or an event where you have to deliver a message, you're trying to address some misinformation that might be out there in the marketplace. This is the process to collect that information, collect the details that you do know, understand notes of facts, and then set the priorities of how you're going to deal with it. And a couple of questions that if you continually repeat these questions will help you think through the process. What do you know? Are you concerned? Yes or no? If you're not, move on. If you are, what about? Again, what's the plan? What is the 2 or 3 steps that need to happen? How are you going to address this issue? Next is very important. Again, once you make the plan, how are you going to monitor? You can't just walk away and say it's dealt with. How are you going to monitor it? Who's going to monitor? What are they going to look for? What are they going to, in turn, report back to? And who are they going to report back to? And essentially, what are you communicating out there? And how are you going to do it? Recycle those questions, and you'll work through that process that we talked about before, and it'll help you through managing, through disseminating that information, either addressing a concern or providing communications to the people that need it. This is something that I'd look at, maybe tailored a little bit for your business, but it's something you could take and put in any crisis communication plan or any handbook, and will help you kind of manage the process, and it's a commitment that you have to your stakeholders. And if you adhere to it, the trust, it just builds on that trust factor. Starting off with, again, communications with the media in a crisis does not benefit your customers, vendors, employees, and families. As I said, the media has a task to do, and generally in a time of crisis, they're not your friend. Bad news sells, good news doesn't sell. I don't believe they're out to get anybody particularly. That's not it. They just need to report news, so they're looking for that, and as we know, bad news sells. So they're not trying to help you. And again, you have to deal with them. They're part of the fabric of any crisis, but at the same time, they're not an organization in a way and a vehicle for you to communicate to your stakeholders, family, staff, leadership. I'll give you a good example, a simple example is if there was a crisis at your plant, a fire, for example, and there's first responders there, immediately media might show up, and now you're bombarded, your employees are bombarded. But the reality is, who's in control of the environment? At that point in time, the first responders are in control. So the negative consequences come from somebody trying to, quote, get in front, somebody trying to share information. The response is that you're not in control. This is a first responders environment. That you, the media, they should be speaking to the first responders, that you will give them information when you have all the details and you have all the correct information. You're more than happy to share it with them, and you'll be back with them. But at that point in time, the people to talk to are the first responders. That avoids a conflict. It avoids the no comment. It avoids the you're trying to hide something. And it allows you time to step back and think about what can I do. But underlying everything else are these commitments, the commitment to talk directly to your customers and employees, send the messages to them directly. As we said a little earlier, very surgical in how you talk to customers, employees, and family. It's a little bit different. They may not be the same representative. There may be different people that deal with these different groups. Make sure that everything is honest. Make sure that you're very upfront with your communications. Critical to protect and your commitment is to protect their personal information. It might be vendor information, personal information on your employees. You're sending that message that all of that data is protected and you will not talk to them. And communicate only when you really have the facts. It's easy to say, I don't have all the details, and therefore I will be back with you. And because if you're in the middle of some sort of a threat or crisis, it's hard to deliver the proper message. You need to be able to collect some facts. And when you have it, and that's okay to say, that is what you're doing. That allows you to say, I'm doing this, these are my steps. And this document and this information is a continuing process. As you get better, as you collect more information, it can be tailored and to address the particular environment. Very quickly, some other steps. Generally, in case of a crisis, express your concern. It's always about the families. It's always about the employees. It's always about protecting those if there's a serious incident, and maybe get expertise that might help you in the time of crisis. Always have tell the truth baseline, and have some simple themes. As we said a few slides back, having 3 simple themes allows you to manage that communication, allows you to focus that communication as part of this. Always remember that the key here is understanding why you're communicating. If there's misinformation, you're trying to address and send a message that it's wrong. If you're in the midst of a crisis or an event, it's sharing information to say what we are doing and how you're managing it. So understanding why the communications is critically important. Oftentimes when we run tests, we'll often hear people talk about, well, we need to get in front of this. We need to frame the conversation. We need to get our side of the story out. If you start to hear those things, the key is slow them down. Stop and ask why. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking to them? Even to the times of 2 or 3 or 4 times. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this now? And usually what will end up happening is if you do that a number of times, people will start to question, well, I'm not sure. We don't have all the data. I'm not sure why we want to talk to them right now. We can do that a little bit later. And that process will stop and allow you time to think about what's going on. And again, this is a discipline that if your decision is, yes, we need to get this information out, then you know why you're doing it, and then you're focused on doing it. So the key thing is, if you hear those terms, got to get in front of this, frame the conversation, got to get out and be proactive in this, especially in a time of crisis or an event in the business. Slow it down, because what it will lead to is, again, that misinformation. If that misinformation gets out, you still have to communicate, and then you have to go try to fix the problem that you've created, or deal with the liability or confusion or complexity that you've created with that information. You don't want to be the one providing that misinformation. Some guidelines to manage that process. We call them home bases, and we work with our clients a lot of times to help create these. Very straightforward. They're just predefined and pre-themed statements that you can use in any crisis. And these are not statements that you'd use verbatim, but they're the themes. They're the ideas that you create all your communications around. Get them in place early. And what they do for you is they allow you to address the tough questions with a cogent and succinct answer. It gives you time to think about your answers before you give them. And they empower you to deal with any questions, and they avoid miscommunication. They avoid that misinformation going out there. And if everyone's trained, the people that are trained to deliver these messages all come to the same, all will present the same environment, will all present the same message, so you avoid that confusions. And then the actual messages can be developed very quickly in a time of crisis. And it can be so that everyone truly understands what they are. So an example of these home bases, and when we worked with Virginia Tech, we used these 3 home bases. We will not be defined by the event. This event did not define the university. It was not something that was it didn't define who they were. And their message to everyone was that they will invent the future, meaning that they're going to look at what happened and improve and find out ways to avoid this in the future and understand how to prevent these kinds of things and embrace the families, which was key to them, as they're the most important people at the time were the families. So those 3 home bases were established at that time, and they were the talking points. So as the communication went out to families, as it went out to the media at the right times, as it went out to boards of directors and to the staff, the messages that they received were all built around these home bases. So again, you can see where consistent messaging, to the point, quick, because they didn't have to be created on the fly. It didn't have to go through layers and layers of management to get them out. Allows for, again, quick, cogent, to the point messaging. And these should be built as early in the process as part of your crisis communications plan. I want to direct your attention to the bottom part of this slide, and this is a maturity matrix that we've put together for companies, and on the left-hand side are the different roles, but on the bottom is communications effectiveness, and that's what we're talking about today, is how effective that communications model is, your crisis communications program, the plan, the resources you have. And we'll go through all of these, but it's an opportunity when you look at these to say, as part of your crisis communication team or your crisis management team, to look and say, where do we fit? And what would we have to do? You can see if you're a stage 1 where your messages are confused, very reactive. So if something happens, you have to go write these messages. If you don't understand all your key channels, you don't understand your stakeholders, who they are, how you talk to them, and you realize that there's layers and layers of decision-making process, you can see the type of confusion, you can see the type of misinformation that could be a result of a crisis. As you try to message and respond to your families, your employees, your stakeholders, the industry as a whole, you can see the type of problems that would arise, and you can see where misinformation becomes a big issue, and consequence management then becomes what you're looking after. As you move through this maturity model, again on the bottom, you can see where you're establishing your messages up front, you're understanding who your marketplace is and who you're talking to, you're understanding who's going to deliver those messages, and you're testing. In the stage 4, you're testing and training. And then you can see the difference between stage 1 and stage 4. You can see how, if there's miscommunication out there, how you can get on top of it quickly. If you're delivering the message, you can see where it can be succinct, to the point. And this is a great way to kind of measure your communications program. Some processes we have, again, Predict.Plan.Perform is our methodology. I talked earlier about establish that intelligence network. Find a way to get that information and collect it and understand what's happening in your industry, happening about your business, happening about your products, what are your employees saying out there, and be able to say, if there's red flags raised, you can respond to them. That's the awareness and prevention training. If you see red flags, what do I do about them? Safety of my employees. If I have a bad actor as an employee and he's talking about guns and he or she is talking about just terrible things on a Facebook page, how do you respond to that? And it can, some of those things can be avoided. Also, just general information throughout your business. Security assessment, again, part of any a good continuity plan to understand how you can address those concerns, and if you meet the requirements for a safe environment. Build a plan. have a plan in place, communicate, crisis response plan, but importantly, a part of it needs to be a separate communications plan or a separate crisis communications plan and program with those message maps I talked about before, about the 3 points, having the home basis, having some of those details already put in place so you don't have to be writing in the time of crisis. And then training. Performing means training. Make sure that the right people who are going to deliver the messages understand who they're going to deliver to them, how they're going to deliver to them. Understanding what the message maps are, what the 3 home bases are, and how they would be delivered. Work with them and train through that exercise. Another thing is we're going to have a virtual exercise on the 19th. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure if you're on our mail list, you've probably seen something come by. Again, that's a great time to sit and say, okay, how would I communicate in these places? If nothing else, you sit and say, how would our crisis management team respond to our vendors, to our customers, to our employees? What would we say? How would we say it? And you'll start to think back to some of those messages. Also, take a look at your insurance. Very critical, especially when it comes to cyber, because that's a changing area, and a lot of people we're finding are not kind of up to speed on their needs there. And we do have a Behaviors of Concern users group, which is on our website. It's a great users group, a lot of good information about these types, we talked about these kind of red flags and what they mean and how to maybe respond to some of them and how to collect information on them. So great commentary, and again, if as part of this communications plan to have someone look at those allows you to make those decisions. And again, as we always do, we do have a brief here. You can get a hold of the brief, and it allows you to, come back through and take a look at these things I skipped over and moved through today. And you can pick it up on our website and download it, or if you want to contact me directly or just contact Firestorm directly, somebody will get back to you and get that brief to you. Again, I want to thank the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce and the Eastern Great Lakes Association of Contingency Planners for their support. We really appreciate their commitment to these webinars and helping us, drive this education through the community. And hopefully that you found it interesting. Number one, Bill, I know we have an opportunity to put in some questions. I don't know if there were any questions.
No questions, Blair. Thank you.
Okay. And any other comments?
It's Michael. I just want to say I think it's
yes,
absolutely, when you're talking about the communication styles and who responds at what stage, I think it's so important for organizations to realize that it's not just in a crisis mode, but they need to do this for all of their planning phases, to consider these areas, because things happen that they're not expecting, and the way that they respond to it through communications can impact the actual results. I think you've touched on some great points, and thank you very much.
No, thank you, and again, thanks to everyone for their attention, and to our partners for helping share some of this information.